Book, thank you for accepting this dialogue. Just give a quick introduction of this sort of dialogues I started to organize during the COVID in about March. I want to just to have a free, open dialogue between artists mostly, and just because I think we don't have much of opportunities in general to talk freely between artists, even in beside few closest friends, but in general it's very difficult because everybody's most of the time taken in the shows or in the exhibitions or around, very busy thinking on their how to sell themselves in general. This is what usually the idea of an artist we have around. But so for my concern about more the meaning and the thought about what is in the ideas and what are really thinking the artists, I want to have this creating these platforms to be able to share opinions. And of course, because since we have this COVID pandemic, and most of the people, including artists, were obligated, segregated at home, not able to having a normal life or also normal activities. I start to have the idea of reflect, doing a thinking on what making art is meaning, what making being an artist is meaningful for the society, for the community we interact, if we can interact in general. So I just want to have this introduction just to say how it started. And tonight is the 11th meeting we had. So Book, we just know each other a week ago, basically, because I know you as an artist, as a name, and for what you have done in your activity as an artist, and I can say pioneer of the internet mostly. And we decided, we found this title together, Art, Money and Power, Online Art, Crypto Art and Political Abuse of the Internet. I just want to introduce the title, and of course I introduce you. Welcome to be here. I leave you the word.
Hey, hello world. What can I tell you? It's I would like to say that it's a pleasure to be here, but actually I'm in my room, so it's a flat experience. It's like a normal experience. It's not a special occasion yet. We still have to make it cool.
Sure. So basically, and you are in which city? I forgot about where you live. You are in.
I live in a mega metropolis called Ljubljana. It's a capital. It's a capital of Slovenia. It's a very small place.
Sure. How was the pandemic during the pandemic in your town? I mean, it was pretty much like in Italy, or how you live this situation?
Well, physically, the way it functions, it's quite similar with a curfew and with all this medically induced coma of the society. But we were lucky in Slovenia because on the same day as the quarantine, March 13th last year, we also got the right-wing government. So we immediately started organizing the protests. And even today, after what is this, 15 months, or how many, 14 months, we're still protesting all the time, organizing big and small and medium-sized demonstrations in the streets and all kinds, in all kinds of ways. So our lives are not boring, and I want to use this amazing global platform to thank our authoritarian government for providing me with the opportunity to keep my mental sanity by protesting.
Just for me to understand, and also eventually for the friends who are connected. So you meant the totalitarian? I mean, just to explain a little bit more, what happened in your in Slovenia, in your town, so that you are actually demonstrating, and we had also a sort of demonstration here. Not much. I don't understand if your demonstration is about political parties or like activists of sort of in the art field, or most general in other different kind of political.
It's a political thing, but the artist community is very seriously involved. We are having an authoritarian government very similar to the Hungarian one, actually very well connected with the ones in Hungary, using the same playbook, doing the same type of pressure on the judicial system, on the media, on the culture sphere, and so on, introducing this, machista type of government that was the original Italian, let's say, invention and contribution to the history about 100 years ago.
Right, the right. You mean right, like fascism?
Exactly, it is exactly smelling like this march through the institutions, Marcia su Roma, and it is very sad to witness this dissolution of the social tissue, of this minimum that we did have of, let's say, civilized democratic society. It is quite. I was in Italy in '94, and I was observing the society that elected Berlusconi, and it was a disastrous situation that Italy never came out of even today. And but Slovenia is not yet so deep, let's say, in this populist right-wing government, and there is an active opposition. So that's what's going on. What is interesting is that artists are a big part of this. So it is good. In a cynical way, I'm congratulating the regime. Of course, I'm against them, and I'm just saying this as a joke. But it is a fact that thanks to the nature of the regime and thanks to the protests, we are still sane. We didn't lose our minds because of quarantine.
But I mean, so I guess for what I understood, the political situation has been the same also before. I mean, it probably during the quarantine or during this COVID time, it became more aggressive or more oppriment in a way that people felt more closed and oppressed by the regime, or what?
No, this is the paradox. This is the first thing I said earlier. We got these two things on the same day. We had quarantine and the right-wing regime on the same day, March 13,
so
last year.
I'm sorry, I don't really know a lot of the situation, honestly.
Yes, it's local. Honest. It's local
sorry,
stuff.
Sorry if I am not so familiar with the local situation. But I'm interested to understand. So, an artist of all kind of like actors, musicians, visual artists, they all are pretty much connected and participating in this political event or to
Yes,
make
there's
themselves
several.
somehow some sort of
There's several main protagonists in opposition to this illiberal government. There's, political parties of opposition. There's the unions that are slowly entering the scene. They're very slow. And then there's this protest movement. That's not the totality of the society, obviously, but it's a large portion, especially in the cities. And here in Ljubljana, since the very first lockdown ended sometime in April last year, second half of April, we have protests every Friday. So it's been 57 or 58 Fridays. Every Friday, there was a protest. The biggest was 10,000 people, several times. We achieved that number, which is a very high number in a city of our size of 300. And right now on Friday, in 2 days, is again a big call for a big protest. So we are expecting 10,000. Next to that, we have frequently, not every Tuesday, but we have frequently protests in front of the Ministry of Culture. And obviously, this is done mainly by the artists, by the people from culture. So we are busy twice a week.
How usually the artists protest? Just I'm curious to know which kind of protest they do.
Well, here you go. The first one was, I believe, on today, 1 year ago. So a few hundred of us went in front of the Ministry of Culture and covered the entire glass facade of the building with a lot of printouts of failed communication and documentation with the ministry. So, people who, for instance, were asking for some grant or have received some letter from the ministry, we all brought, printouts and covered the entire facade. It looked like a big fish, Then one time we came, also maybe 100 or more of us, and we just lay down dead. And then one time we brought some chairs and sat in the street in front of the ministry, and we were looking at the facade and applauding, like in theater. And one time we told everybody to bring their favorite book, and we were all walking in a circle, like in the prison, when the prisoners have a 1 hour walk, a little break, and everybody was reading their favorite book aloud. So we were playing with this. Yesterday was Tuesday, and we have organized again an action in front of the ministry. It was a smaller group of 50 this time, and we gave everybody a glass, a transparent glass of red paint. So, we were raising the glass for the minister, who is known to be an alcoholic. And then we all, spilled that paint in front of the ministry. Actually, this is today's newspaper here. And there's a photo. I don't know if you can see a photo of that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Some people spilling paint. So, we're having a lot of support. But also there is a group of anonymous, but I can tell you very great and very established artists from visual arts, actors, street artists and theoreticians that work as something that is called a non-group and doing some night interventions, some street art. And that group is now, for instance, represented in this big exhibition at Maxi in Rome, because in a big show about heroes of ex-Yugoslavia. So it's, it's serious.
And
so,
and basically, I mean, there is a group, like you said before, there are different groups that are organizing and making those sort of protests happening in a way that is not just casual, no, for what I understood. There are special organized groups that making these sort of protests and putting together, right?
Yeah, yes, including, physical fighting with the police. We are all getting these penalties from the state. Sometimes it's 400, sometimes it's 1,200 euros. But we have a solidarity network. We have also a group of a good organization of voluntary lawyers who help with this stuff. So there's also this reply by the regime. So it's I don't want to dramatize. It's not like Latin America. There are no death squads and there's no sniper fire from the parliament building, and everybody's alive. But it is quite rough, and it is the roughest in everybody's memory. In the 80s, at the end of socialist times, there has been a very nice dissident movement, very emancipatory and also very brave. I was of the right age back then, and I was involved. But I can tell you that what we are experiencing now is a much sharper confrontation. So that is a bit of a surprise.
Before the government, before the situation, the political situation was more what? Was more like pretty much normal, or
yes,
like in Italy, or like what?
Slovenia is typically run by versions of social liberals, let's say. So it's a bit of a mix, but it is mainly centrist.
And how do you explain this right change on the right side? How do you explain this?
Oh, it did not happen in an election. It happened also in a very Italian way. There was a majority government of a coalition of 4 or 5 parties, and then they had their coalition conflict, and then the prime minister decided to call for an election, to resign, expecting to trigger an election.
Mm-hmm.
But as a matter of fact, two of his coalition partners made a trick move. They changed the presidents of the parties, and then they went into a new coalition with a right-wing authoritarian guys. So it's one of those. It's like a game of chess for these party presidents, and they play with power all the time. So it was not a shift in electorate. Nothing happened with the people. There was no election where suddenly there was the new wind in the public. No, so it was purely inside the parliament.
Pretty much like in Italy then, because we had the votes in 2018. The electors voted for Cinque Stelle. The first parties. Then they try to put together a government before with the Lega of Salvini, and after he made failed, he made to stop the government with the Cinque Stelle. Then they tried with the left party of the PD. They also made failed the government, and now we are with the technical. They call it technical with Draghi, the financial guy that is governing the Italian system with all the rich and the imprese. How do you say the business economy people that are basically pushing him as the big shot. So, all right. So we are a bit panoramic situation.
It's like a courtroom drama. It's like it is good that the constitutions allow you to do this kind of things, but the framing of the constitution was done at a time when politics was not so shameless, I think. So now all these games are becoming more evil, and I'm sad to say even more dangerous.
And I agree. And they probably use the pandemic situation to make their tricks. because at least in Italy, that's what I think. They didn't accept to go to election right away, and they said no, we need to deal with the pandemic, so we cannot go to the vote now. We need to wait before to fix the problem of the pandemic
But
situation.
but since the corona, since the pandemics, there have been so many elections around everywhere in Europe. I was working myself on two elections, one in Serbia last year in springtime in May or June,
Mhm.
and one in Croatia just last week. So pandemics is definitely a problem. It's an obstacle, but it can be fixed. So elections can be
No, yeah, no.
organized.
I think it's an excuse. The politician, they found that as an excuse
Exactly.
to manipulate the people and to say now you cannot move, you cannot do anything, you need to stop home, and we need to tell you what to do because you cannot go, you cannot vote, you cannot have a normal life. That's what basically it is. And
So
unfortunately,
anyway, that's my situation in Slovenia, and it is keeping us all busy because suddenly all of us artists and poets and actors are not talking about poetics and about creative act and about Duchamp. Instead, we're talking about lawyers and hearings in the police stations and escaping police and so on.
but look, my feeling, and I think the many artists in general, are the majority in general, are not that involved in the politics because I don't like politics in general. It's a very I mean, my culture of politics is a very corrupt kind of situation in Italy, at least. And my feeling has been always been out politics, being not involved in my normal life. But of course, after a while, when you see the situation that doesn't change, and we have, beside the corruption in politics, we have also mafia, crime, etc., that is basically taking everything in their power, in their hands to control everything. And of course, at one point, you feel like you are stupid. No, you are just don't count. Don't your life doesn't count anything. You have no right to do anything basically. At one point, you need to act, to need to do and be involved somehow. So that's when I started to participate and be more active in politics with the Cinque Stelle movement. That, of course, is being a movement, a new movement, started using the tool of internet, because that's how this party, this movement of activists and people grow up. And of course, to me, it seems like the revolution of this age, because all the media, the traditional media, were in the hands of the big, powerful people, now Berlusconi,
Yes.
or the other parties, and of course, normal people don't have any any control of media or information. Thank goodness, I believe, we have internet, even if we have the last point of the title, that is political abuse of the internet. It is very interesting because from one side, we said the populism grows all over in the world through the internet and with this new media, because of course everybody basically, before we didn't we couldn't interact and couldn't find a lot of information because we didn't have this tool yet. No, before, in the 80s, in the 90s, we didn't have this media, so of course we need to listen, and only information, access to a lot more information, a lot more possibilities of knowing things. But in another hand, once the traditional, I think, this is my opinion on this. Once the traditional media realize, even the newspapers, because we have a big, at least, you know, the majority of the media, newspaper, etc., are all owned by big, powerful people, Confindustria, Berlusconi, etc. So they have total control of the information they do, and they keep brainwash the people, no, all the time with their whatever fake and junk stuff they say all the time. So of course, the alternative with this, the possibility that normal citizens could access to this media, and of course all over the world, could give us the opportunity to have an alternative information. With this alternative information, this is my opinion, thank goodness we had an alternative also in politics, because that's how Cinque Stelle in Italy came up. But unfortunately, you know, the big explosion we had in this kind of politics, unfortunately, didn't have a strong structure to keep, you know, steady in and control uh, the local situation on each region and each city all over the state. And that's what we are dealing now, because unfortunately, from all the votes they got on 2018, and also before, but especially in 2018, unfortunately, since that moment of the election, we lost a lot of electors, because unfortunately we don't have a strong power. From the other hand, all the traditional media and all the parties, they made a full denigration and attacking this movement as the only enemy they have in their view. And that's what we have today. Also, keep doing like a full-time fake news, creating all sort of faking information that could just to denigrating this new way of making politics.
You see, there's so many things that you said now are very important, and you know, trigger all kinds of thinking. First is that Cinque Stelle was I remember, quite a progressive thing when it started. It had this aura of progressive, let's say, medium specific type of political organization. It looked promising, but also to anybody who had ever seen a political party from vicinity, to anybody who was ever involved in any level of governance, village, city, regione, state, whatever, it was very early clear that at the same time, this online organizing that is giving everybody a voice and opportunity to express their opinions, blah, 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 is not a tool to really get organized. It's just a tool to express emotions.
Yeah,
that's what the switch. Yeah. And this switch between emotional volcano that is very good for election campaigns and governing, getting organized to govern, that switch never happened. Or if I'd never looked at Cinque Stelle closely. I apologize. I should have. I would love to know more.
Sure, but your opinion, your point of view is very clear, and I agree on this this way, because
this is a general.
Yeah, because unfortunately they didn't they didn't have also the time or the organization from the very beginning to create a static political party organized on the whole territory to go to actually administrate and govern the whole country. I mean, unfortunately, that's the limit, and probably this is gonna be the implosion. This is what is happening now. The implosion of a movement that, if is not able to find a solution, to find a way to organize and create this structure, unfortunately, the end is gonna be soon. You know, it's gonna be very soon and collapsing.
It is a collective test of intelligence for such an organization like Cinque Stelle. Once you realize where the problem is, are you going to be able to solve your problem? Are you going to be able to organize?
They try very hard. I have to be honest. I followed the whole situation because I started to be active in the 2015, even a little before, but to be really active in 2015, and the energy was very positive. Also because before they were in the opposition, and of course protesting and trying to go against all the corruption, all the agenda of politician and corrupted in general situation. And it was very, very good because they start to be very strong and going very hard against this culture in Italy. We have, unfortunately, a mixage between mafia and politic and corruption in general. And they did a very good job in that moment, in that situation. Once they won the election in 2018, they got 33% of votes, 33% of votes in the election. And it was about 10,000, 11,000, 11 million voters physically, and was the first party in Italy. And of course, at that point, they had to choose if go to govern or to stay at the opposition. And of course, with so many voters, they decide they choose to go at the government, to be in the bottom's room, let's say, no, the big room control, and try to change a little bit something, even if they make a big compromise with the other parties, the oldest, even with the right wing of the Lega Nord, and the other, and even after with the PD, there was the left, called center-left parties, that both involved in so many legal issues that corruption, etc. But they did actually very important things in a legal for the legal change, and also for the economic situation of poverty. They did actually the reddito di cittadinanza, that is this citizen, minimal income for poor people. That
basic universal income.
Now that they want to do for the universal, that I'm totally for with this idea. So basically, they actually achieve this big target, this big situation. Before, unfortunately, we had 10 million people that since the 2000, when the Europe was united, not with the euro, basically all the parties from the left to the right, they liberalize everything, like industry, economy, all the infrastructure. They all went from public to private. And unfortunately, we know that in Italy, everything didn't change to the better situation. It changed to the worst, because in the end of all the friends and privates, means all the friends or friends and families business, they made only worst, and only worst for normal people, for normal and poor people. In fact, we end up with 10 millions of poverty in Italy, especially in the south, losing jobs. Many industries, they moved to where they can get cheaper labor. They can have a fiscal paradise like other parts of Europe. And so the rich people getting more rich, and the poor people getting much poor. That's what at the end has been the whole situation.
But the only way to prevent such a rise in social inequality is a structural approach, and it requires much more than just a list of top 10 problems and a situation where 10 million people can shout very loud that they have problems. The trick is that the English, they have a fantastic little word play. They say the poetry of elections and the prose of governing.
Mm-hmm.
To govern is really not so interesting like having an election campaign. Governing is not going to TV studios and playing for the camera and winning the hearts and minds of the people. And governing is supposed to follow some very fundamental ideological understanding of the world and the ability to create a framework of a vision. And governing is not just like extinguishing fires. Oh, it's burning here, it's burning there, and then you jump from one problem to another. And in the end, what you did is you extinguished a few fires, you are very tired, and you have done nothing. And I mean, we are seeing this in all of these countries in post-Yugoslav, little countries, where you had new governments, new parties, and everybody is just selling away everything. It's just privatization, and it's like you said, like the famous the 3 M's of Italian contribution to civilization. Machiavelli, Mussolini, and mafia. And these 3 M's are killing Italy, but also every other country I know.
Actually, I have to say that from my point of view, the before of this that you mentioned, there was another big power that is much in the is 2,000 years in charge and in control of everything in Italy and outside Italy.
Yeah.
So
those guys are special. Those guys are so sweet. Yeah, you're right.
And that's for me is the one of the reasons why at least Italy is locked. No, is very doesn't have the possibility to change the culture and the system, because unfortunately we have this anchor, this big wave on our legs, on our chains that is stop every change, every good change. So
yes, let's move on. Let's talk about other discussion. But this is going to depress us.
Going back to online art and we have actually also this new fashion or new way of making and dealing with art, calling NFT or crypto art. It looks like the for at least in the artistic system seems to be the new fashion. What do you think about the new way, this way of dealing with art and visual art? And
it is very interesting to me how you have just precisely how you have articulated the question. How it is about dealing with art. It's not about art, and it is interesting to see who is doing the dealing. if I'm not too anal with my words here. So when I see NFT, there's few things to say. Of course, the obvious one, the gold rush. Oh, fantastic. Finally, some digital artists will get connected with some money. And that is always good. I like to see that because I am a digital artist and it would be good if I would get connected with some money. But every other observation is creating a problem. First, the origin of the phenomenon is not even dubious. It's just criminal. It is invented and proposed to the society by adventurer IT entrepreneurs, and it is being embraced by the gamblers of the startup world, not by the prettiest people around. Okay, and it's been going on quite strong for quite some time. Now, why do we suddenly talk about art in that context? Not because something artistic happened, but simply because the cryptocurrency world needed a new wave of hype, a new wave of marketing, and this idea of selling digital art via these platforms is not helping the art, it's helping the platforms. It's helping the whole idea that Bitcoin and Ether are good and that something meaningful can be done with that.
If you don't mind, I want to make a connection because like system of art always trying to find a new wave of making putting on a big display, big news, big something fashionable. We had a pretty similar situation in the 90s, when the finance with the blue chips stuff create that kind of market in the art system to blowing special certain artists to make them very very expensive, for like an economic finance speculation of
Yes.
like Wall Street,
Yes.
like Wall Street, and that's to me made start when it started the visual art or art in general, at least in the visual art world, made the worst situation that we could accept as artists in this contest, because to me that an art work and an artist is connected or somehow used, treated as a finance blue chip, like a economical blowing balloon, to me is the worst things that can happen to the art field.
Let me
and
let me tell you something. Yeah. Let me tell you how the tools that I used to cope, how I approach it as an artist. I usually say that I'm doing three types of art. I'm doing art for artists. That is sacred territory. That is a type of art that I do really with the best intentions, and I discuss it with fellow artists. I show my online work to my colleagues. We talk about it without a burden, any burden. It's really pure. Then I do art for galleries. This is not yet commercial. This is art for curators and for theorists of art and for historians of art.
Yeah.
Here already, I'm not in a artistic dialogue with fellow artists. I'm in a dialogue with a broader apparatus, let's say, of art. Not yet the market. And the third type is art for collectors or art for market. So sometimes the same idea, the same art piece can first appear in this first type. So it's done as part of a dialogue that I have with my artist community. Then it can also be shown in some biennials or, some museum exhibitions or some solo show in a fancy gallery. Or in the end, the same piece can appear in a catalog of some commercial gallerist or in some NFT auction. And if I know myself in what dialogue I am in at a given moment, then I'm not really nervous so much because I don't let the commercial world come nowhere near the type of art that I do if I'm in dialogue with other artists, for instance. So this is the way how I juggle or how I handle this personally. I don't claim it's the best recipe, but it is helping me.
Sure, sure. I mean, I understand. My point is a little also another thing. Now, because we discuss, we didn't put on the title, but we mentioned one the other day. We had a little short conversation, and was this dream talking about the online dream, no, the internet dream. From my point of view, and I want, of course, my question after is for you. From my point of view, I had also a feeling we are pretty much the same generation. No? We grow up, we born in the analogic, and we became in the middle of crossing those two big moments, from the analog to the digital. So this change, to me, I also had the feeling and the impression they could really make a big revolution, no, make big change for the how the information and all the connection could spread all over the world without border, no, with this idea. So in my mind, it came to my mind one possibility that also in the art world, visual art especially, because I think other form of art like movie or music and other are already, I think, in this other way of making art, of at least selling or connecting to the people in general, to the majority of viewers. It's basically like Walter Benjamin wrote his book, no, work of art in the age of technical industrial revolution, no?
Mechanical reproduction.
Mechanical reproduction. So in my from my perspective, that the idea of being able and using also digital ways of making visual art could basically became like in the music, for example, the way you can make a piece. You don't care if it's a single and only one piece, but you can make hundreds, thousands, millions of pieces that everybody can be a small collector. And this, to me, is the best way, no, to be able to having most of the people be connected if they like book Cosic. They can buy one image, one video, one thing, and buy for 20 euro, no? And buy the piece that they don't mind if it's one single piece original or not. That's for me could be the revolution of for at least the visual art, because my feeling is that since I work for a small circle, a small elitarian group of people, that mostly of them are the richest and the worst of the world, because that's what is unfortunately the situation. And to me, in my from my perspective, from my point of view, that could be the best solution. That doesn't mean that you cannot continue doing all one pieces for just big collectors that they want to pay a lot of money. But in the other hand, you can also keep going and doing pieces that can be sold to millions of people too. And in that meaning that idea also the connection to normal people could be more open, and also artists could be also more accepted and understood by the majority of people. Something that unfortunately today doesn't happen, because when you ask normal people around, what do you okay, they know about musicians, they know about actors and movies, but they don't know anything about visual artists, because for them visual artists are only a big theater, a big circus of few rich people that like to do weird, crazy, like Maurizio Cattelan or other people like that. So that's my point. What do you think?
Yeah, well, you said very many different things, and I'm not sure they all go together in the same narrative very elegantly, I must say. First thing is with especially at the very beginning of online world, when it came back down to civilians after 20 years of existence in the military and academic world. Uh, um, Yes, everything was openly accessible to, of course, to the people who could afford to be online, who knew how to be online. Those were two biggest obstacles: money and knowledge. No? It's very similar dynamics like the Cinque Stelle you just described. It had a great potential. In the beginning, it was genuinely beautiful, poetic, and very just. It was very just. But then, when the larger community noticed, for instance, the commercial world or the advertising industries, and then the political world and the military, when internet stopped being just a space of freedom and became a space of fear in the end, it is exactly what we were describing earlier about Cinque Stelle. Simply things mutate if the model is not strong enough. What is interesting with NFT and with this new wave of selling digital work, especially online work, is that there is still a space for maneuver. Um I have sold to several, well, quite a number of museums and collectors in these last 25 years. But my stuff has always remained accessible online. So if a museum buys my, web work or an online video, they get my signature on a certificate. I get the money, which is the most beautiful part. That part is really great. Uh, but my work is nevertheless continuously accessible online for free. So the fact that there is an exchange of money and or financially supported relationship between me and the Steady League or some other museum does not influence the very basic attribute of my work, which is accessibility to everybody with a browser. And I think that is the corrective. So by entering the art market, I'm not exiting the egalitarian old school promise of an open, free internet without fences, without borders. No? So I think that is a workable hybrid, and NFT is not changing that component. So if I'm selling my pre-existing online work, my ASCII movies, for instance, that are accessible on YouTube nevertheless. But now somebody wants to buy a digital version of that same certificate, which used to be a piece of paper with my signature, but now it's digitally signed in a ledger on a blockchain. Well, fantastic. That collector can always claim that they have a special relationship with, me or an artist, and at the same time, I didn't kill the other attributes of my work. My work is still there for the whole world to see. So that is cool. And I think that is actually cool. But of course, what I really hate about the NFT is that there's all this talk right now how NFT is empowering young artists to do better art, and to arrive at more audiences. I think that's bullshit. You can just do it by going online. You don't need, NFT is like Instagram, but you cannot do liking. You cannot press like. You can just buy. Well, I mean, that's the difference. But with NFT, you are narrowing the possibility. NFTs are not interactive art. NFTs are very focused on an object, on a digital object. They have no way of having a collaborative NFT, no way of having a process as NFT. So it's really just cutting down all of those dynamic attributes of online art that made it so sexy in the 90s, that have landed us all in the fundamental literature, in the curricula of all of the art schools in the world, because we were innovating in the 90s. We were asking tough questions about the very creative act, the very substance of artistic practice. And we were actually generating a new poetics and a new type of medium specific work.
Because in the 90s you were a pioneer, gallery, etc. They even know, or they weren't able or didn't show much of net art or this sort of digital art in general. So
well, some did, and we had a good run, already in the 90s. You see, from 96 on, the very big venues started showing our shit. We had Documenta. I was showing Venice Biennial in Slovenian Pavilion.
Yeah.
I would do a piece in 97, 8, 9. In the afternoon here in Ljubljana in Slovenia, I would make an online piece, and next morning I would read about it in New York Times. And it's not my experience only, but of the whole generation, of the whole group. We were very hot for a while. Then in 98, we had a big meeting somewhere in Canada in a place called Banff. And we have declared the death of net art, exactly because we did not want to play that game with the art system. But that was really just a declaration of our very first little group of, like you say, pioneers.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have already the third, fourth generation of kids that, do their shit, and they have a different attitude. But hey, we are the avant-garde, the piss and vinegar punk pioneers. We invented the majority of the methods and of the poetics. So we can now go around bragging how cool we were and how fine we are still today.
Political abuse of the internet.
Well, this is a trick, like I was just implying earlier about.
I'm not thinking to doing like an interview. I'm just pointing on something we said because I think it's nice conversation and also
sure, but please, let me tell you what I mean with that.
Feel free to answer or just talk or say something that you want. But sorry, continue.
Yeah, let me tell you. You see, like I said one sentence earlier when I was making a correlation between history of internet and history of the political party Cinque Stelle. That there is obviously a promise. There is obviously a grand potential about this new way of dealing with art or dealing with politics. And internet itself was, for a long time, a big promise. But by now, it has been taken over by commercial interest that, if you look at the case of Facebook, for instance, are built not around any benefit for any user, but are built around the benefit of the platform itself. Somebody once said, the way that the Facebook is optimized to elevate your engagement is just like as if highways, the big highways in any country, were not built to take you quickly from Rome to Bologna, but instead where the architecture of the highway was built in a way that everybody can see the accidents better. Because when there is an accident on the highway, everybody slows down and wants to see the dead people. And now, if you would imagine like a highway built around that, and I read this somewhere, I liked that.
Unfortunately, this we are going through just a few days ago that for the
oh yes,
cable car on here in Piemonte,
yeah.
It came down. Or last year when a bridge near Genova fall down, or near Lecco here in Milan, another little bridge they fall down just for what we mentioned. They said to you about political
Yes.
and private interests that doesn't always in Italy almost never going on the direction of in favor of normal people that unfortunately are the only one that always die or lose their blood.
So exactly, you're very right. It is exactly a precise observation, and it's a tough shit. It's a problem. So what I'm noticing is that if you try to look at the global scene and how you had early political organizing online with the Zapatistas, for instance, in Chiapas in the 90s, there were our big heroes, and I have to tell you, right now, this afternoon, there was some Zapatistas here in Ljubljana in a squat, and I didn't go because of our little chat. I was so
really?
sorry, but no, yeah. But no, it's okay.
I hope
so
that
what I'm saying, if you have in mind the fact, the way that platforms are architected around the goal of keeping the users engaged. That's the first item. And then if you think of how all other social protagonists saw that this game can be played, and one of them is a political system and a power system, they realized, oh, look, Cinque Stelle managed to do this interesting thing online. They actually managed to create a political party like if it was some political startup online. And then they failed to realize the full potential, whatever. But then the bad guys come in and they say, look at this. I can actually start transmitting fake news. I can push the whole population of a country down what is called a path of radicalization. And I can achieve my goals through that method. So this is becoming very dangerous. If you look at American elections, if you look at the gossip about how Putin was financing political parties around Europe, including Cinque Stelle, if I'm not wrong, those are very, very bad rumors or maybe scandals, because it turns out that you have political players that have an interest in disrupting other nations' democracies.
Yeah.
And also inside the countries, you have political players that want to achieve power by getting financing from abroad or locally, it's irrelevant. But they don't mind. For them, it's okay to create chaos, to introduce the new rhetorics of civil war, for instance. We are having this in Slovenia.
You think it's possible? You think it's possible that a community of creatives, artists, etc., in the future could be more together and be able to? I wouldn't say to be a sort of a power against those big shots, those big economical power people, but again, I mean, as just an alternative, to this situation. You feel it's possible to create a community larger and larger worldwide that somehow can be helpful, or at least even for we have a problem like pollution, we have a problem of ecology, we have a problem of wars, we have a problem, big problems all over the world. What can be the alternative in this? I hope, my dream, my utopia is I hope it's not just an utopia, but so far it's an utopia, just to be able, the creatives, more less interested in the economic part of creation, and more interested in, and we see art and politics, no, and more involved in politics, but to actually change the mentality, to educate, and to be able to change the world in a better way. I know it's
Well,
a big.
the short answer is no. There is no chance this would happen in such a fashion. But what we are also doing and seeing that everybody else is doing in the art community, or at least this part of a progressive part of the art community, is to react to the society. There is a communication. There should be a communication between artists and the society. And so, what artists do sometimes is activism inside the realm of art. So you have exhibitions or performances or public performances of all kinds, which are about the society, about how our relations should be. You have artistic projects that are beautifully creative in that sense. But also you have artistic practice that goes outside of art in a classical or in contemporary sense and goes directly into politics, into the way humans are organized and is trying to make a difference. So then we have the whole spectrum, but those are all small things compared to what you are asking about. To create one movement, one group with one name and one protocol and one operating system, no way.
Oh, maybe more, not just one. At least I wish in Italy could be more. Also, the artists community would be more active, because I see sort of participation more in the field of actors or theater or musicians. They are more like a bigger community. Also in terms of protests, for example, to ask for rights or for other things. But in the visual environment, in the visual world of a community of artists, this is, I no, I think is very little, or almost doesn't exist.
Yeah, but I mean, I belong to that community, and I know why it's a great community. But as a matter of fact, we do not have exactly the right to claim very special status. The really crucial, the key, let's say, player should be the active citizen, not the active artist. Active artists are one subcategory of active citizens, and I would look for answers there. And I would ask myself, how come globally now, especially in the Western world, we're happy to deal with politics only one time in 4 years? And in the meantime, we say, oh, it's somebody else's job to govern, and we don't mind whatever they do. And then after 4 years, they have been seducing us. They have been telling us how they are going to do wonderful things. And then, they show us some celebrities and we go happy and we vote for them again. No?
Yeah.
I see a problem in that ritual.
That's why I'm saying, I think everybody, but because of course I belong also to the artistic community, I think also artists needs to participate more and be more involved also in politics, and of course for their expertise, because I think anyway it's the best job of the world, if you can call job, because the other one, if you're talking about economy or law stuff or other things, to me are all a little more corrupted and more involved in not in a right way for what for me is important also on the idea of
using the word corruption
and some feeling of good energy, positive energy in general.
You are using the word corruption and you are explaining how politics is corrupt, but my experience is that the art world is corrupt in the same way, only it doesn't have the power.
But you think the artist or the system? Because the art system, I know.
Well, the entire ecosystem. I'm noticing a very disturbing level of conformism exactly among the artists.
They probably accept. They probably accept the system, passively. But I think the majority of the artists are more victim of the system than not the one who had the power to actually.
But there's not much resistance.
Right, that's for sure. That's for sure.
So again, when you say majority are victims, it can be true. I agree with you, but they're not victims enough. It's not yet bad enough for them to revolt.
They must revolt. They must revolt. We must revolt more.
Yeah. In general. And I think the reason for this is because artists usually, in most cases, they don't have a choice. You don't do art just by decision. You do art because you have to do art. In every generation, there's a good quote. Somebody comes to the same conclusion. And when I was a kid, I read from a Croatian poet in some interview a sentence. He said, "If you can live without writing poetry, don't write poetry." Which means you're doing it because it's your destiny. You are obsessed. You're being an artist because you really have to.
You are chosen. I like to say. You are chosen.
Yeah, it's your calling. And now, if you look at that situation, which is a nice one, unless it's pathological, of course, that is also creating an incredible vulnerability in a social dialogue. When a union goes to have a big dialogue with a minister about a collective, I don't know, something, whatever the unions are debating about, they have arguments and they have the power. Artists cannot go on strike because it is against artistic psychology of an artist, because the artist is condemned to be an artist. It's like a life sentence.
Yeah, but it's also unfortunately the way they made us look like. They made artists look like the big, like Van Gogh, like those weird crazy people that must do their life and be victim of the society, the world, and somehow this picturesque image is still pretty much, for the majority, works like that. Just few people, just a few artists are famous, rich, and can actually choose what they want to do. The majority we see for the how many exhibitions, art fairs, shows all over they made just to speculate and bring in money for the artists. They make such a business on.
No, you're very much right. It is not fair to look at the most successful artists and to claim that they signify anything. If you want to be honest, you have to look at the totality. And you are very much right. Today I was in a little meeting with a friend of mine that works at the municipality, city. And we're talking about, all these hundreds of apartments and studios that the city is giving to the artists for free or very nearly for free, because this component of this old socialist, let's say, order, luckily was not yet destroyed by the happy capitalists.
So you actually in Slovenia you have some help in general for artists in terms of spaces.
It is a fairly systematized way. It exists in many other countries. You apply for a studio, and the city has some number of studios. And if your portfolio is okay, if your application gets enough, points, you get a studio. A good friend of mine just got a studio very near me, and I know we're going to be hanging out there.
Without being friends of some politician or some good connection.
Yes.
No.
Yes,
Just,
exactly.
Just normally for open to.
Yes, yes. I happen to know that this was a very fair, open competition, and the city gave away last week, I don't know, something like 10 studios, but there's many, many more. But this is an accident, in our city. Other cities in Slovenia don't have that. So it's just like that. But why I mentioned this, I spoke today with this guy. This whole system to have this political economy of art, and it's not a small thing. Try to think of a political economy of hairdressers. It's the same. It's a whole person has to live somewhere, has to have an economy where he can basically generate a life, maybe for a family also, But somehow it is an interesting fact. The society does not expect the hairdressers to go through the sacrifice of working for free for I don't know how many times in order to get an exhibition of hairstyles. So you see, the big problem is the business model and also the fact that artists cannot go away from art. It's very hard,
and that's
because
how,
of the psychology.
and that's why there are many sharks that are speculating or taking advantage on this problem.
That's in another sector. That's where art and value come together. That's outside of the question of political economy of an artist life. It is how artists create value from nothing. That is alchemy. That is alchemist's dream. You create gold from lead because you have talent and because some sharks or some honest mediators decide that your work is meaningful. Suddenly, this paint on this piece of canvas is worth $1 million.
Platone was hoping for a states governed by philosophers. I don't know. Maybe my dream, and of course I'm nothing compared to Plato, but my idea is that maybe a government, at least in Italy, governed by artists would be better than what we have with the politician we have right now.
Well, I hope you're not going to take this personally, but I was working in Rijeka in Fiume for a few years just recently, and as a matter of fact, Rijeka did have was an independent state for about a year and a half, 16 months.
Fiume, you said Fiume. You said
Fiume. Yes, in Croatia, and it was actually a state run by an artist.
I think it was a Fluxus, or is that the states or no? It was a Fluxus.
No,
I remember.
It was an actual state. This is not an artistic project. It was an actual state run by Gabriele D'Annunzio, who was an artist.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
and this didn't give good results. Did not give good results.
Didn't make good things. But actually, I remember when I was working with Namjoon, he was mentioning some artist. There was a Fluxus artist that was actually became the president of the states where he was from. I think it was or from Georgia or from some other place in the east somewhere.
I don't know.
I remember this. He was mentioning this book.
Oh, it's a complex relationship.
Yeah. Listen, I think we are in 10:25, and has been a big pleasure talking to you. I hope you didn't miss too much the Zapatista place meeting, whatever it was. And I thank you very much for having this conversation, very friendly and open that you are. And thank you very much. Thank you.
Don't worry, young man. Keep in touch. Don't be a stranger, and whatever, stay cool, and wish you luck.
Thank you, Luke.
Okay, cheers.
Cheers.